Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Dr. Freedom, and welcome to the Omega Files. Tonight we've gathered, to have a little discussion about the recent rounding up of that ever-popular series, Game of Thrones. And of course, as we know, the series ending has caused some controversy. What doesn't in this day and age? I'm not kidding. Anything they put on the screen these days, chances are a mad bunch of chimpanzees will go crazy and throw poop at it. But then again, they did have some valid concerns. Maybe but okay. So let's go around. When I call your name, go ahead and you give me your thoughts and feelings on how they rounded up the series or anything else in general you want to bring up about the series. Go on ahead. Rejoining us tonight is Carol Ann, so I'm going to let her go first. Go ahead and hit us with it, Carol Ann.
Hi, it's good to be back. Thanks for letting me be on here. Since the series ended, I've been putting a lot of thought into this. Basically, in my opinion, the way it ended made sense. It really did. Because the very first time you see Jaime and Cersei together, they're, messing around, being PG here. They're messing around in the tower. And, Bran shows up, witnesses them, and then Jaime pushes him out of the tower, and that's how this whole saga began. Now, I've never read the book, so I'm only talking about the TV show. So that's how everything started. It was that moment. So it kind of is cool that the king of Westeros would now be, Bran, who was paralyzed and went through this big journey and stuff like that. And then also the last time you see Jaime and Cersei alive is them together. I mean, they're not messing around, but, they had a very dramatic moment and where they're together, So in a way, it's, I don't know if it's Shakespearean or poetic or whatever, but it kind of makes sense. Everything does make sense. And, even with Daenerys, it makes sense that you have this girl who is, she's exiled. She's sold off by her brother. She's like essentially raped and, beaten up and, God knows what, and she becomes like, very powerful and everything like that. It makes sense that she would become like power corrupts. So it makes sense that she would become, a mad queen. And then here with Jon Snow, you find out that you thought he was the illegitimate child, and in Westeros, I'm not going to say the B word, but in Westeros, they treat them like scum, and you find out he's not, and he's the actual rightful heir. But then because he is so like humble and he doesn't want power, he goes back to where he always wanted to be, which is north, So all these little plot twists make sense. But as fans, we were gypped royally of 7 hours. I do not like those two producers. I forget their names. I really don't care about them. Somebody told me that they're going to be associated with a new Star Wars trilogy. I really don't think these guys are going to be as popular and as successful as they were on Game of Thrones. I understand they're humans. They want to go on and do new things. I totally get that. But you don't gyp a show and the fans. I mean, for 6 seasons, we had 10 episodes. Then all of a sudden, season 7, we only have 7 episodes. Season 8, we only have 6 episodes. During those 7 hours, we could have seen Daenerys going more crazy. We could have seen more of Bran's powers and ability than he did. He did jack bleep during season 8. He didn't do anything. He sat there with his eyes rolled up in the back of his head like, he didn't do anything. And, from what I understand in the books, he's much more central in the books, but he didn't do anything. And then people have complained about the dragon. Well, why didn't the dragon kill Jon Snow instead of destroying the throne? My thing is we know that dragons are sentient because you saw that with that scene. Remember, I don't know what season it was, but remember when Tyrion was talking to the 2 dragons that were locked up? You know that the dragons are smart and sentient and knows what's going on. Wouldn't it have been cool during those 7 extra hours if you saw clips here and there with Daenerys having him, Dragon, whatever his name was, kill people indiscriminately, and then having him like kind of hesitate, or when she was destroying King's Landing, having the dragon like hesitate when he was like destroying like innocent people. You would have seen little bits, and all this would have made sense instead of the producers wanting us to flip a switch and suddenly dislike Daenerys, and accept Bran as the king. Because everybody wanted Arya or Sansa to be king or queen, whatever you want to call it. So basically, I'm sorry I was long-winded, but I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I finally able to like say it. But it makes sense, but the producers can kiss my butt because they robbed us of 7 hours. So that's my opinion.
Okay, well said. Some of those points are rather valid. I agree with you. I think the last, if you're going to end the series, why split it 13 episodes into 2 seasons? That made no sense to me at all, personally. Also, you could have had a bit more in there. I agree with you that it would have helped things flow a bit better if there had been more to the last series than what we got. But more on that, because let's go over to the next person here. All right. Okay, next up, Philip.
Hello. Right. What can I say to start off with? I feel sorry for the whole Stark family, because from the get-go, since season 1, we lost an awful lot of people. We lost the mother, the couple of brothers along the way in the Red Wedding and all that. So the Starks are almost wiped out from the get-go. You've got Ned Stark beheaded, and then, of course, the wife and the sons, and so on and so on. So I think they deserve to be where they were by the time season 8 came along. They deserve to be the last men standing, so to speak. I wish, though, that we had a bit more oomph from the Lannisters, because they seem to just waft it through the seasons here and there, doing things fairly wickedly, but they didn't get their just desserts at the end. I mean, look how Cersei and Jaime died. That was so lame. It was like rubbish, to be honest. And the thing with what Caroline said about the dragon, Drogon, and the intelligence of the dragon, I can understand where she's coming from, but at the same time, the dragon was clever enough to say, do you know what? Screw you lot. Nobody gets the throne. I'm going to fry it. So it did that, and nobody really gets the Iron Throne. All they do is build a new kingdom out of it. A couple of characters I did enjoy watching throughout the years that it's been on. Joffrey was a right bastard. I enjoyed his character. If someone can make you hate that character that well, then that's a good actor. So kudos to him. Alongside what's that one who got eaten by the dogs? I can't remember his name now. What was he?
Bran.
No, what's his name?
Was it Ramsay Bolton, I want to say?
Ramsay Bolton, that's the one. He as well was one of my favorite characters, because he was so sickly and horrible. The things he done to Sansa and the way he was in general. I like characters like that. When you got characters like that in Game of Thrones, it makes you sit up and pay attention. But going towards the end, it was okay. It was rushed, like people said, and I don't know whether it's because they run out of what to use from the books. Therefore, what can you do beyond that? So they had to do something to make the ends meet. And whatever they did, we just have to put up with it, because that's all they had to their arsenal. So at the end of the day, it did what it did, whether you like it or not. And that's what I've got to say about it.
All righty. Okay, let's move over to William.
Hey now, everybody. You gotta realize that I'm gonna start off with the 2 producers. Remember when they were filming this final season, they had nothing was signed about them dealing with Star Wars. So them people complaining that they rushed it to do with Star Wars, that was not signed, sealed, or nothing. That business was not done at all yet. You gotta. But what's funny is that they became popular doing Game of Thrones when they were doing following the book in the first 5 seasons, and of course when of course George R. R. Martin did not finish his last 2 books, they had to come. They had to sort of end it. But what's unusual that some people forgot is that HBO wanted it to go another 3 seasons. It wanted to go to 10. It wanted 10. They didn't care about money or nothing. They wanted. This show to them was the most popular view that was bringing in viewers every week. So they would throw money at it and pay the actors a pay raise to get them for 3 more seasons. So one of the big gripes that since Martin did not finish the books, I thought maybe they were going to bring some plots that was not used yet from the books, like Lady Stoneheart and other things like that, just to stretch it out. But we talked before was one of the complaints was that this season and the previous one was short, and like Karen said, I felt sort of cheated out of it because if you was gonna rush it that much this quickly, there was no reason for a gap. There was none, because if you was gonna end it right then and there, knowing that HBO was willing to pay you more money for 3 more seasons, I mean, it made no sense. After the ending with you said Ariel traveling to the west, that was a good thing. Her character, have her own life to continue. Her sister being the queen up in the north and seceding from the realms, that in a way made no sense. But I gotta correct you on one thing, Phil, that even though some of the Stark's children are still alive, there is no more Starks because Bran cannot have no kids, and when his sister starts having kids, she's gonna be married using that name, whoever she marries to. And Jon is not a Stark, so that right there ends the Starks. I wish the ending would have been Drogon carrying the body of this chick and bury it somewhere else. Just to give that character the ending it really deserved, because we all expected that she was never going to get the throne at all, but the way she was, you could say, quickly killed, I didn't like it. It could have been better. Again, making 6 episodes in the finale, it didn't make no sense. But we all felt that she was not going to get the throne. Now, whether she was going to leave peacefully, I don't think that was going to happen either, too, because she had a big army. And then, of course, because of this rush finale, there's certain things that we don't know what happened. Like, we know the the Unsullied moved to an island, but what happened to the other military group? And in a way, the Unsullied would have, and that whole army would have fought the Starks to get Jon Snow for murdering their queen, because they don't have to live in peace because she was their queen. She freed them from slavery. So for them not doing anything to Jon, I'm a little bit confused me right there. They could have done something better about that. Maybe somebody could have fought one-on-one just to deal with that. They could have easily solved that. Hopefully, the thing is, thanks to this sort of bad press of an ending, HBO might only bring one prequel series, because that's already being filmed right now. The other ones that was in the back burner, they said then not to touch them for a while. So whether they're going to be anything besides one prequel, we wait and find out about that. I get to other things in a little while. I'll get to the next person go.
Alrighty. Yeah, I agree with you on a couple fronts there. If not the Unsullied, where the hell were the Dothraki? Because remember, the Dothraki followed her like they were freaking, they believed in her. Yet, okay, she's dead. Okay, what do we do? Just mill around like idiots for a while? No. So I agree with you on that.
Didn't most of them get killed in that earlier battle in episode 3?
Now, I agree with you on that. I thought most of them had been killed in the battle against the Night King, which why I couldn't figure out why there was suddenly a whole shit ton of them at the last battle. But at the same time, they did show a shit ton of them at the last battle. So I just thought they might react as well, you know. So we don't know. Kind of weird. Okay, Connor.
Game of Thrones is without doubt my favorite show of all time. It's unbelievable. Like all 8 seasons, I will say. Now, I had problems with season 8, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I'm just astonished by what they've done with this show. It's changed TV. It's a bit like, you know, Breaking Bad and The Wire and all of them major shows that have come before that have sort of changed the TV landscape. But, you know, there's been some unbelievable storylines over the years. There's been so many good episodes, more than I can count. Amazing characters, you know, people like Daenerys and Cersei especially. It's some of the best written characters in TV history, and I think that the good thing is that this show will be remembered for years and years and years to come, and people will revisit it, and I think it'll also gain traction and get new fans as well in the future. Season 8, it had its issues, but to be honest, like all 6 episodes, I actually enjoyed. I didn't have any issues with it. The only, I guess I only really had issues when I thought back on it. For example, Cersei's death sucked. I mean, I'm sorry, but she could have, for someone who has probably laid down some of the best revenge ideas against her enemies throughout all 8 seasons, that the fact that she would go out on such a whimper like that just sort of really got me kind of riled up. But you know, the series was poignant for sure. I mean, it definitely was emotional. The Battle of Winterfell was one of the best TV episodes of all time. That will definitely go down in history, I think. And yes, we all know it was too dark, but I mean, it was a battle, and to be honest, it added to it, I think. You know, the first 2 episodes in particular, I really enjoyed. The second episode, which was more of a character piece, was probably the best of the series, I would say, because it went back to what I think Game of Thrones is underratedly known for, in that it's got the most amazing character development going for it that any TV show in history has ever presented, I think. And, you know, there were some issues online and some issues that I had with the way that Daenerys was dealt with in the last series, but I predicted years ago that she was going to go mad, so it's not like it came as a huge shock to me. And we got the goods in the end when she burnt King's Landing to the ground, so I'm not complaining. But overall, it was a decent series. Was it the best? Not by a long way. You know, there's seasons like season 4 was a particular favourite of mine. Season 7 was a top choice as well. You know, season 1 was even great. There's a few episodes and series that come way before it, but overall, it's definitely better than at least 99% of what's on TV currently. So it's by no means downgraded in any way. I'll get into some specifics later, but, you know, I'm going to miss it. It is the greatest TV show of all time. And I'm wondering what will come even close to beating it in the future, to be honest, because I'm not sure that there's going to be many shows that come close.
It's going to be a hard one to top, you know, especially, you know, the world building it accomplished in, you know, just a short few years. It's definitely going to be a hard saga to beat, you know, down the line. It really set the bar. You got to give them that as far as character development and, you know, the story and the background, all the things you learned here and there. So I agree with you on that. Okay, Beef.
It's hard to pick up on any points that I think already haven't been made. I suppose the moral of the story is that you can't please all of the people all the time. And, you know, you can have your little internet petitions where you go, I will send $10 for you to remake this. And you can all send you money and then, yeah, no one will care. But to be honest with you, that upset I can actually agree with. There is a sentiment to it. It's true that this has been a landmark series, that it has changed the landscape in the way these shows are done. It's epic saga done on a massive scale. And whether you like it or didn't like it, visually, certainly this ending was, you know, amazing. The cinematography, the effects, the way it looked, the atmosphere was great. But, yeah, when you take it all into a thing as a package together, yeah, it's always better when it's been dancing to someone else's tune, which has been George R.R. Martin. So when they've had the source material, that is when the show has been at its best. And I know he gave them pointers of where he was thinking about going with it, and then they've run with it and made their own idea of it. But I agree with Carol Ann, and I agree with the rest of the guys. It's when you build your fandom based on people's expectations of a character. And I'm not saying that, oh, yeah, everyone's has to be catered for, but you have a vested interest in these characters. And part of the fun about it is the joy of getting there. The journey is as much the experience as everything else. And where you've had you've seen all these people go through very long journeys, and they've spent a long time where they're traveling almost in real time from place to place. And there's been so much emphasis put on character development and what happens to them and what changes it, that we've got into this last season, and there have been something that they haven't really done before, like quite big time jumps. And it does lose something in the character's story to it. No one really, I think, finished up where you, as a fan, where you've become invested in one character or maybe several characters, ended up really where you wanted it to be. Yeah, Cersei really didn't get the payoff that I think merited the character and the amount of time that that actress has put into it. Daenerys, didn't really get that much shrift by the end of it. She went out on a whimper as opposed to a bang. Yeah, okay, you had the big fire at King's Landing. But then your very last episode, you spend the best part of 15, 20 minutes of Tyrion just walking around on his own, looking at everyone burnt up. Well, guess what? We saw that last episode. Let's get onto it. Let's see some stuff actually happen now in that last episode. And it's hard not to feel cheated. The only satisfactory thing that I've really come away from that with was we got the Hound showdown that we wanted at the end. There is so much missing. There is so much, perhaps, I don't know, yeah, you can say rushed, that it could have been stretched out longer. Do you know what? I don't care what they're going to do afterwards. I don't care. Well, then get someone else to do it that will just make it, that will expand and perhaps make it a bit more palatable and a bit more in-fitting, because it is such a clash with what has gone before. The 2 weeks, the Dothraki and the Unsullied, so they've just sat there on their hands for 2 weeks, with their fingers up their asses. It's not going to happen like that. They'd have killed Jon Snow straight away. And all the stuff that was made about Jon Snow being the true heir to the throne. To be honest with you, if you had taken that, you could have easily just worked around that. That wouldn't have been a factor in the story. And it just seemed by the end of it a rather pointless thing. And they have spent so much time with Bran being the three-eyed raven and finding out this mysterious knowledge. And and it just really didn't amount to diddly at the end of the day. I do feel like it's just disappointing overall. And does it leave a bad taste in my mouth? Yeah, it does, to be honest with you. When you've spent that much time and that much effort in it, it's just not great. No one, apart from the Hound, got the payoff that they deserved. And they bring out Tyrion and they go, well, the person who's been through the best journey through all of this is Bran. No, it's actually not. If you think about it, Arya's been through the most transformative journey of anyone at the whole group. They spent the whole series saying about how having one king or one ruler and the throne is bad, and they just re-established the status quo at the end. It's just like, it would have made more sense to say, hey, guess what? We're going to all be self-governing, this, that, or the other. And Sam's laughed out of the park. And it's just the wheel just continues turning when you're trying to make a series about the wheel being broken. It's just like, sorry. You have lost it at the end for me, guys. Whatever you agree. I think the criticism, the way the criticism has dealt with isn't a bad thing, but the criticism is definitely valid.
All righty. Texas Tim.
Well, I tend to agree with almost everybody to a certain extent. I thought it was fine, though. I didn't really have a problem with it. I tend to agree with Connor. I think this is probably the series of the decade. It's there's nothing else like it, and they did a pretty good job. But as to what has been mentioned, I think the biggest mistake they made was to split up these last two series. If you remember, I guess back in 2017, when Series 7 was broadcast, it claimed that it was shorter because I guess they didn't have enough story for two series. They were going to split it in half. But then they decided to take an extra year off in between. And so when you have a series of 7, which was fine, but then you come back with the back half or the other 6, 2 years later, then it's not going to meet the anticipation of the fans, because like Caroline said, you felt cheated. It was too rushed, it felt like. Had you watched these 6 after the previous 7, or had they done a better job and made it into a regular 10-part series, even with expanded episode timings, it would have been more efficient. And I think there would have been less complaining about it. I think the biggest problem is that all you had was this leftover bit where everything gets resolved really kind of quickly. If you had watched these 6 after the immediate 7, if they had planned this without the gap year and all that other stuff, I think it would have been received a lot better. Right, Beefhead makes some good points, though, about some of the plot threads. But I think I agree with Carol, too. This was the good way to end it, though, with Bran, because nobody expected him. I mean, and what I took away from it mostly by the end, that very long Return of the King ending, was that this has really been about the Starks the whole time, basically. I mean, it starts out with the Starks. It's their family that we're focused on. And then we have all these interloping characters come in, and they're all like, they all have a say in, who's going to take the throne and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's the Starks that survived the whole thing. The Lannisters are pretty much gone, and Daenerys is gone. So, I mean, it really was all about – what really was their story. And I think that's kind of cool. But otherwise, I mean, I don't understand a lot of the complaining online, but that's – has been pointed out, people are going to do that anyway. It's hard to probably craft an ending of something that's so epic. It's been kind of not made up as it went along, but pretty much like they're adapting books that are being written. So they have to decide at some point when the author ran out of steam, and they have to figure out how to end it somehow. This is what they came up with. And I don't think it was that bad. I mean, a lot of characters paid off in a way that you might have expected them to. So, yeah, I'd say overall it was a success. And I think, 5-10 years from now, when you're watching this on your DVDs at home, your Blu-rays, or you're new to it, like a new fan, you're not going to notice that you didn't have to wait 2 years. You didn't have to think about it for 2 years. In other words, you're just going to watch it straight through, and you're going to enjoy it probably. But we'll have to see about that.
Yep, time will tell. You never know. But, okay, before I hand over to Open Mic, there's one thing I do got to bring up. Bran the Broken. Yeah, you've finally ascended the throne, but more than one throne you'll ever know. Because there's one everlasting know-it-all that I never thought I would ever see surpassed. Bran the Broken, I want you to know, if you're out there in some fictional space, in my mind, you finally dethroned Dr. Frickin' Z from Galactica 1980. Thank you. Okay, one of the most annoying, never-lasting know-it-alls in 39 years. Right there, he finally beat him. Okay, but like I said, all right, my take on it. There's just a few things, like I said, it didn't make any damn sense whatsoever. For one, Sansa now has to be Queen of the North. That's not going to end well. That's not, sooner or later, they're going to go to war with the other 6 kingdoms. And the thing that still I'm racking my brain about, the lords of the North will never bow again to another king, but they're putting a Stark on the throne. What in the name of 15 hells would the guys in the North have a problem with a Stark being the king of the 7 kingdoms? That made no sense whatsoever. Not one tiny bit. And that's the one thing I have a big problem with. It's like, other than, okay, we needed a blurb so we could stick a Queen's thing on top of Sansa that they'll throw in the commercial for the upcoming trailer. Other than that, it made no sense. That to me, okay. Now, as we said before, you had the classic hero's journeys. And I agree with Beef. Bran the Broken was AWOL for how long? There were whole chunks of the series where you never even saw that annoying little shit. Meanwhile, you knew where Arya was. You knew what she was going through. Meanwhile, you knew where Jon Snow was. You followed his story. Tyrion Lannister, hell yeah. Did he go through a hell of a transformation? Not to mention all the people who were associated with him. But one of the key things I want to point out, and a lot of people miss this, you should have known that Daenerys Targaryen was not going to be a proper ruler. And the one example I've been bringing up, and it's for you folks out there in the land, Episode 1, Ned Stark, what did he tell his kids? The person who hands down the sentence should also be the hand that holds the sword. Daenerys never did that once. She always had somebody else go kill somebody, or she always had the dragons do it for her. She never once executed a punishment on her own. That right there was a number one clue that a lot of people, I'm shocked, missed. Because that right there is telling you it's not going to end well for Daenerys Targaryen. She's becoming drunk with power. You can see it more and more. Now she's got 3 dragons. She's flying around thinking she's invincible. Oh, there goes one. And then she's heading, north. Boom, there goes 2, because she's just gotten into this head trip that she's destined to rule the 7 kingdoms. And I think that was her major downfall on top of everything else. But that's just me. I'm going to go to open mics here. So, okay, who wants to hop on this first? Anybody? Nobody.
I think your point about that, though, they were really stupid, to be fair, because all she had to do, once she found out the prophecy about Jon Snow, all she had to do was marry him, and then they could just pretend like she inherited the crown. She wouldn't have to go crazy and kill everybody, and they would have lived happily ever after as the rulers, even though he was secretly the king and she was, you know what I mean? Why didn't they do that? I mean, it made no sense the way it ended up, especially for him to be banished and be a bastard again after the whole series building him up to be the guy that's not really a bastard. He's actually the son of and he's heir to the throne. We didn't even find that out till I think last series, right? Or was it this series? I don't know.
I think it was last series, yeah.
But the thing is, all they had to do was get married, and it would have been fine. Well, they still would have had to vanquish Cersei, but I mean,
yes.
To your point, that they let shit get in the way, really. So.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Sam found out, and then Bran found out by pinkering around in the past, doing his one-eyed raven head trip or whatever, 3-eyed raven. Okay. All right, William, you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
I think there's a question. Remember in the past when Cersei was young and she wanted to see a fortune teller? The fortune teller told her a certain way she was going to die. And that upset me, but that didn't happen in the episode. Like, wait a minute. I remember the fortune teller. Because that was a big thing when they played that episode out. I said, why didn't it happen that way? I said, why didn't these 2 guys who started the show and put that in the episode didn't follow up on that in the end? I said, that don't make no sense. And I said, they're not reading their own scripts. What the hell? I said,
that die.
Yeah, but yeah. The fortune teller said that she was gonna be killed by the one she loved. So it made it look like Jamie was gonna kill her. So that's what it looked like.
Yeah, because I remember the bit where she told her that she would basically be standing over the graves of her children.
Yeah.
That she had so many children and basically she was gonna lose all of them. Yeah. I remember that bit. Mm-hmm. All right, Connor, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, the prophecy stuff was weird because I think there was I can't name them off the top of my head, but there is a few prophecies that they didn't actually follow up on that they should have. But the Arya one was kind of weird because I forgot about that. Or it wasn't really played up like it was a prophecy. And then they rediscovered it in season 8 and it basically ended like the second biggest storyline of the entire Sure. And you know that it's clever writing, because if there's one thing that Benioff and Weiss are good at, it's foreshadowing. And when you go back, you can see a lot of stuff that links to the end game, we'll call it, that makes a lot of sense and does add a lot of depth to it, whether or not people think that the final season was rushed or not. But to be honest, I've got to praise two people particularly this season, and that's Amelia Clark, and for all 15 minutes that she was in it, Lena Headey as well, because I think that them two consistently have been the most outstanding people on the show. And there's been others as well. There's been Maisie Williams has been another who's just got better and better every season. Sophie Turner is another one. John Bradley, particularly, who plays Sam this year, was exceptional. And I can see him being in contention for a few awards. But I just think it's a show. It's a bit like Harry Potter, actually, where you feel like you've really grown up with some of these characters. And so when you get to the end, it's really added a sort of melancholy sadness to what happens. And even though most of survived against all odds, you know, there's still it's still tinged with a lot of sadness, to be honest. So I think the longevity of the show has just added to how epic the end was, because it was such a long time coming, and it didn't disappoint, to be honest. I have got to be honest. It wasn't as spectacular as I expected it to be, in that it wasn't bloodthirsty, and it wasn't, as I said, everyone dying, but you know, it had a Lord of the Rings-esque sort of feeling to it, and that suited me just fine, to be honest.
I think by the end of this series, people are like, Lord of the what? Okay, Caroline, you were up next.
I do want to add that basically this is the first show ever that me and my mom and dad watched together. I mean, I started watching it first, and you know, and then we didn't have HBO. So basically I ended up buying seasons 1 and 2 on Amazon. I binged it in like one weekend. And then season 3 was coming up, and I watched it like, you know, illegally, you know, online. You know, there was like a little box that we would watch like 5 minutes before the show ended. We had to get like a link and everything. So the whole season I watched on a little screen this big. And and then my parents were like, what are you watching? Because I was like, nobody bother me. And then they ended up catching up, and then season 4 came. We bought HBO, and you know, so it's been, you know, a heck of a ride. It's, you know, because we've never watched anything together, you know, really, you know, as a whole family. My brother's the only one. He could not get past Circe and you know, and Jamie. You know, I tried getting him to watch it, and I remember when it got to that scene, for like a week, every time he saw me, he would go, ew, you know. But I mean, and I don't think I'm the only one. I think there's a lot of families out there that for all these years, like 8, 9, 10 years, whatever, have been watching this show. And I do think it's going to stand the test of time. I think it's going to be, I really don't think there's going to be a show that's going to beat it. There's going to be a lot of shows that are going to try, but I don't think they're going to come close. And, you know, me and my mom both love Peter Dinklage. I mean, basically, in a way, episode 6 was Dinklage's episode, because he did all the talking. They, you know, it's almost like they said, okay, here's the end. Who is the best person that's going to be able to have the most vocabulary? And it really was him. I mean, he was great. But another thing that I do want to add that I didn't hear anybody else mention is the Night King. Even though it was cool having Arya kill the Night King, again, it was quick. Just like with Jamie and Circe, it was quick. You know, wouldn't it have been cool if she snuck in wearing like a White Walker's face or something like that, and then doing it that way or something? I mean, you know, from day one, we were led to believe that the White Walkers were the biggest threat of all the Westeros. And here, in a blink of an eye, it was over. I mean, yes, it was a great battle. I mean, that episode, that scene with Arya running through Winterfell and all the walkers were running after her. To me, that kind of reminded me of what's that Tomb Raider? Not Tomb Raider. What's that movie with all the zombies and Raccoon City?
Oh, Resident Evil.
Yeah, it really reminded me of Resident Evil. And, I was like, oh my God, Mom, this is so awesome. And she's like, what are you talking about? This is spooky. And then I told her, I'm like, this is really awesome. And yes, there was a huge, huge Lord of the Rings feel too. But I didn't mind that. Seeing something like that on TV and not on a big screen, I mean, it was really epic. But again, it's down to, them rushing it, because you were afraid of the Night King from like day one. And then here, Arya does that cool move, that you saw her do with, with Brienne, and it was over. So that's another thing that's kind of upsetting, is how quick they wrap things up. The main story plots, they were so quick to wrap it up. So, but I do think, I forget who said it. Was it Tim? Down the road, it's gonna really stand the test of time. If you watch this like 10 years from now, on DVD, people aren't gonna blink an eye.
Okay, Beef, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, there's no disputing it is going to be one of them landmark shows. I think, if I can think about things that have been like in recent memory, it's sort of like Who Shot JR? Do you know what I mean? It was that sort of thing that captured the world's attention to such a point. And in the same sort of way with that, it was like a little bit rushed. And I think that's why, people felt aggrieved. Like Caroline, I do agree. I think that the Night King sort of didn't get the payoff that I think we would all like to do. We'd have liked to have, for a guy who never says a word, to understand the motivations behind it. Perhaps it would have benefited from a little bit more, that you could have taken 5 minutes from, a little bit, Tyrion walking around the child remains, like I said, of King's Landing, and had it like that, instead of him, digging out Jaime's body and Cersei's body and then taking the gold hand and having it melted down into a codpiece for himself for a later time. Who knows? But like Connor said, that you can talk about all the principal actors that have been in this, but as much as I like that, and we've all grown with them and all travelled with them, the ones who survived, I am glad who survived. But I would like, for my own personal thing, to mention a couple of people who I think have made the journey that much fun. Like I've already said, the Hound, been great. Tormund is comedy gold. The comedy characters have really made this. When you've got to have drama and dark and seriousness, you've got to have that light to counterbalance it. And I think, pound for penny, you cannot get any better than Tormund, who's just been on point as a badass, but just funny as hell, to be honest with you. They've given him some of the best comic lines. And also, I've got to say, Jerome Flynn, who, if you're from the UK, you've known him from basically some really not so great TV shows over the years. And he's one of the guys who ends up being the most mercenary bastard going through this, that he will beg, steal, borrow, be bribed, kill anyone, screw anything, just to get what he wants, to climb that social ladder and the greasy pole by any undue, underhanded means. And he ends up being on the council by the end of it. And the best thing is when he says it's all like, the coin is willing to pay for the re-establishment of the brothels. It's just perfect. It is so in fitting with his character. So I will take my hat off and say, as much as you are unhappy with certain characters, there are some characters who you think, do you know what? They came out on top, and I'm glad they got to where they got to and how they got it. So, for every shit sandwich, there's a PB&J for some others.
Yep, and Brianna Tarth, knighted by Jaime Lannister in more ways than one. Okay, Philip.
I was just going to mention her, saying that I think she got given short shrift in the last season. She should have at least ended up with Tormund, because I think they would have been good with their popping out babies that drink giant's milk and all that. So that would have been cool. But what happened to Theon's sister? I cannot remember her name for the life of me. Did we see her at some point?
She was at the meeting at the end, but she went back to the Iron Islands and basically took over again to re-establish her house's name.
Thank you. Right. Okay.
Okay, Texas Tim.
Well, I was just going to add that, this is the cooler series of the decade, isn't it? I mean, it's every once in a while a show comes along and does that. But I noticed around this last year or so, a lot of anti-Game of Thrones sentiment for people that don't watch it. It's become overhyped so much. You see like hashtag don't watch Game of Thrones or no, I'm far too clever for that by sanctimonious assholes that, I've never watched an episode. Like, they're proud of that. I mean, and I used to be the same way with Breaking Bad. I mean, people talked and hyped.
Oh.
He'd be bad.
Talk about Breaking Bad. Oh, no.
One intonation.
Okay, he'll be back. But in the meantime, let's go to Connor.
Yes, I forgot to mention Tormund, which is a sin. That guy is just unbelievable. In season 7, when the Hound and him are talking, and he says that the cock and the dick joke was funny. That was the funniest scene, I think, of him by far. But he's had some proper cracker scenes in the past, and he's one of the best characters in the entire show. I got to be honest. Forgot what I was going to say now because I just had Tormund in my mind. Love for Tormund.
Yeah, a lot of the side characters were also epic, like Jorah Mormont. Look at all he went through, from, being a deposed knight, to ending up at, the Khaleesi side there. Then he even lost that for a bit. Then the guy got the stone guy's disease and he had to get that, cured and all that. Look at all the stuff he went through, but, at least he died pretty much the way we kind of figured he would. He died defending his queen's life. So noble way for him to go out. Okay, you want to finish that thought, Tim? Oh, we got you back.
Okay. You'll probably just have to edit that out. Sorry.
That's okay. It happens. All right, William, you had your hand up next.
I think one big mistake that the show did was kill off my little bear, because I wanted her to still rule the North when she lived there like that. And I think the one thing I think the show could have done it was do another a time skip for maybe either a few months or a year to see what happened to all these characters after a year, to see what happened with them at that. See if maybe any hostility might be forming, or does the whole land is in peace like that. Also, is the dragon still flying around with this chick's body around? But that's something that could have ended it right there, with the dragon flying somewhere, digging a hole and bury her there, and that's it. The end of the show right there. Give her only peace that she so deserved. So
I forgot her name, Little Mormont.
Yeah.
But what was her name?
Lyanna Mormont.
Originally, yeah. If you watch the production notes that were after that episode, they said HBO wanted them to cut that because they thought it was too brutal showing a child being killed in such a way. But look at the way she went out. She took out a frickin' zombie giant. She was that damn, she went out, but she went right to that sucker's eye before she went out. That to me is like true courage. Here's this little young lady who has more courage than God knows how many of them guys in the North had at the beginning, if you remember right. She was the one who stood up, said, we're going to follow such and such, and we're going to stick to it. And she did. Sure, she only had 20-something nights to offer up in that one campaign, but she did it. Like I said, stalwart as hell. I think that's about the best word I could find to describe her. All right, Philip, you had your hand up next. So.
I was just wondering. I don't know if it's me, but since the start of Game of Thrones, from series 1 coming down to series 8, has it lost some of its gore in your face kind of attitude? Because I keep thinking that beyond, say, what, season 6, it seems to be less and less gory than what we're used to. And I'm kind of wondering whether was that because they were told to tame it down at some point. It's become a bit too much in your face. Or does that mean? Well, maybe not then. But I
Said about how the little girl stabbed the big thingy in the eye. That was pretty.
I know, but there were, like in the season where you have blokes getting their heads exploded by being crushed like that, and then you got rapes that go, kind of rape scenes that are very sort of like there. But in the last couple of seasons, it's been a bit milky, not so strong.
I think it's because they don't like to show violence against children as much, as other things.
I know, but not so much against children, but in itself. But
Even though the
overall,
first episode ended in fleeing a boy out the window, but
Exactly. I noticed they kind of strayed away from it a bit. Sure, there was still stuff that went on. Like I said, even The Walking Dead, like I said, I'd count on one hand how many times you've actually seen a zombie child since episode 1, all the way up to episode the series are at now. And I think that's one of the things they kind of frown away from. And, the fact that her death was so brutal, I think is what it was. But at the same time, like I said, look at how she went out. She went out kicking ass. Okay, Connor, back to you.
I don't think it was the violence that they shied away from. What kind of got worse, I will say, in a sort of really loose term, because I don't think it did get that much worse, was the dialogue. The dialogue wasn't as good when they left the books, I don't think, because George R.R. Martin and Benioff and Weiss have two different ways of writing the way that the characters speak, and that became really noticeable. So the writing and the dialogue in the later seasons probably sounded a lot more pedestrian and a lot less gripping and engaging than it did in the previous 4 or 5 seasons where it was all the books. But one thing I wanted to mention actually is that you mentioned Jorah Mormont, Freedom. His original ending was actually going to be that he was going to go north with Jon, but it didn't make sense for that to happen because he was never north of the Wall at any point in the series apart from the White Hunt, and apart from the fact that he was shamed by his house, and obviously he had a price on his head, and all that sort of stuff in the early seasons. He still got pardoned for that. So there was no real reason for him to stay alive even, or to go north with Jon. So I think they came up with a much better ending for him of having him die for Daenerys, to be honest. But back to the point about I think it's the dialogue more than the violence that's really filtered down, because this season, the season just gone, got a lot of slack for actually how they were portraying women in the way that Sansa did remark that the fact that she was raped made her stronger. And there was a lot of backlash to that, especially in this Me Too sort of era that we live in. And I think it was season 5 where Ramsay raped Sansa. That got some unbelievable backlash. Like, you won't believe the online backlash to that particularly. And I think since then, there has been a reticence sort of to portraying sexual stuff. But I don't think that the actual gore and violence has in any way sort of been filtered down. I think it is really just sort of the sexual stuff and the dialogue that's suffered over the years.
Yeah, that was really controversial. And even though luckily the majority of it took place off screen, they started towards the beginning, then it jump cutted away from it. But still, it was implied that, that did happen, that Ramsay Bolton did rape Sansa Stark. I was just glad that he got his comeuppance in the way that he did. Oh, man. That guy deserved to be eaten by his own dogs. Sure, it was kind of cruel not to feed the dogs for a week, but damn, that meal was satisfying, wasn't it? better. Yeah, or to quote a classic line, what can you say? Beats the hell out of Gravy Train. Well, to paraphrase a famous line. Okay, Beef.
I sort of get where Phil was coming from, and I do to a point. I think I do agree with him. It lost a sort of epic quality to a certain degree, and where we've had water cooler moments. If you think about like the big deaths that we've had, all in a run up to this and everything like that, you had, the Red Wedding. You can't not talk about that. As deaths go, that was pretty epic. If you think about, I forget his name, but the guy who was formerly the leader of the King's Guard, and he had that fantastic hallway battle scene where he's like cutting down the masked men and everything like that, and he dies. That's an epic, like, hero's death, for want of a better description. And you've just gone through and you've had even David Bradley and the scene of carnage that you get when Arya kills and goes back for revenge. There has been this sort of epic quality that's, Ramsay Bolton, he got built up and you hated him. You got the amazing death scene that Diana Rigg did and everything like that. You had the High Sparrow getting taken out by the wildfire. It's all this epic sort of staging and everything like that. For me, rather the Red Witch, rather than her just like walking off and taking off her necklace, I would rather have had Davos stab her and take her out and said, do you know what, that's for the little girl who taught me to read and everything like that. There would have been such a great, much more emotional payoff. And I think that there was a dialing back of what is nowadays called that epic nature. And the only one who got that was, again, like I say, the Hound. When you see him fighting his brother, stabbing him in the head, why won't you bastard just die? And that guy goes out, guns blazing, in a fiery death, falling from the tower. That's great. And it does. It's sort of, when you want epic and you built up for this many years to epic, and you sort of like get a fart in a quiet room, it's a bit sad, isn't it, chaps? Come on. For other shows that we've watched, it's sort of like, some people love, some people don't like the ending of Sopranos. Gotham was a real sort of, fart in a closed room as well. That's the thing. It's sort of, seal the deal, chaps. Do you know what I mean? Just seal the deal. Give us what we came for.
Trust me, I would have rather seen, Cersei Lannister drawn and quartered than just getting a roof dropped on her head.
That's it.
All the things she's done.
I'd have loved to have seen, like, do you know what? You would have had you had the destruction of King's Landing. Okay, you didn't necessarily, Cersei going out in a basement really didn't, justify that. A fitting ending between her and Daenerys would have been great. And then, do you know what? A facing off between Sansa and Cersei would have been great as well, because there are two sort of, people who identify as female facing off against each other in, hatred of each other. That would have been great, because you just get this feeling that there is bad blood. And when there is bad blood, then you expect bad stuff to happen. And it's sort of, close, chaps, but no cigar.
Yeah, what I was hoping that would happen in that final battle was, somewhere along that line, that dragon was going to run down by that castle really quick, yank Cersei out of that tower, and then just like slowly munch her to pieces as she's spitting in the dragon's head.
Or just to even just have like a final face down between the two. Because if you think about it, the last time them two met together, she was just holding all the cards, cut her mate's head off, and then she's just like, laters, and then that's it. It's sort of like, you'd want like at least final words to be exchanged, apart from, oh no, well, I'm going to drop a house on you. It's more like Wicked Witch of the West than bitch of Westeros. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think she should have gotten a bit more of a comeuppance. Okay, Texas Tim, you had your hand up.
Well, I was just going to comment on what you guys are talking about. That you're talking about a series that has been so epic for so long that they really must have had a hard time coming up with something that was going to be suitably epic. I mean, to round it off. And I think I tend to agree with Connor. I think they did it, but I do see your points about how things might have been better had they stuck to their guns. I mean, I think you're right. I think that outcry over the rape thing a few years back did kind of make them stop. And to be fair, what did people expect? You're watching Game of Thrones. Stuff like that happens. Stuff like that was happening in season 1 with Daenerys anyway. Was she raped by her husband? I mean, in a way, it wasn't like, or she's pretty much sold to what's his name?
Paul Drago.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember the outrage about that episode, and I can't think. And that was before #MeToo, wasn't it? But I mean, they shouldn't have shied away from it. I get what you guys are saying. They should have just stuck to their guns and said, you know what? This is Game of Thrones. If you don't like it, watch something else. I mean, it was shocking, but it was supposed to be shocking. This is a show that, I mean, when that guy's got his head exploded by what's his name? I was like, what the hell?
The mountain.
I mean, how far are you going to go? I mean, he's over there squeezing his head and eyeballs are popping out and whatnot. It was just like, wow. But that's Game of Thrones. And if you don't like that, watch something else.
And one guy I'm going to mention before we go to the next person, because none of us has mentioned him yet, and it was one of the saddest endings of any character in the whole saga. Hodor.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that, he kind of knew exactly where and when he was going to die. And the very clue to it was in the one word he could say, which was shortened from hold the door, as we found out later. Hodor. That poor, amusing giant, everybody thought, he's just this big, magical, stupid guy, who's been running around doing this and that, and they just built it up so much. I literally had tears in my eyes at the end of the door. That episode.
Even he had a better traversive story than Bran, for God's sake. He should have been on a throne, you sons of bitches.
Hodor. What do you want us to do today? Hodor. Okay. Connor, you had your hand on that.
To be honest, yeah, Hodor is a perfect example of the argument of if Bran knew all this was going to happen, then why did he let all them people die for him? Just to get to that point. I mean, even though it is, the whole thing about maybe it's fixed timelines and stuff to, coin a Doctor Who sort of reference. But yeah, it kind of makes Bran into a sort of really unlikable, distasteful sort of character, I think. And the second point is in my own fan fiction, in my own canon, Cersei died with a detonator. Because if you actually see in the episode before, there's wildfire on every tower in King's Landing. So my own canon is that she detonated the wildfire while the dragon was perched on that one tower before the bells rang, and she blows everyone to hell. Like, that would be the ultimate ending for me for Cersei, and that would just make me love a character even more. Because after she beheaded Missandei, even though Missandei did nothing wrong, I was just like, I fucking love this bitch,
Well, when you look really close during the final battle, some of the buildings are going up, and you see the explosions in green.
Wildfire, yeah, which is great. It would have been great if the wildfire had much more of an impact, to be honest, and you just see little explosions going off. I think it would have been a great sort of ending, and it would have also fit in with Cersei because she's brutal till the very end, but also wildfire has been her weapon of choice, really, so it would have been kind of fitting within her story.
I think it's because she used the majority of it to blow up that church with the sparrows or crew, whatever guys were in it. I think that's what happened. But okay, Carol Ann, you've had your hand up for a bit. Go ahead.
To talk a little bit about Bran, I mean, how many people really thought Bran was gonna do that little magical thing and control the dragon? I mean, I really thought that because, I think it's what episode 3 or season 3 or whatever. It was a long time ago, where he controlled Hodor, and and that kid said, they were like, "Oh, what's the big deal?" And he's like, "Well, nobody could do that." He was you got the impression that Bran was the first person that was ever able to control a human being. So you got the impression that he was very powerful, but he really didn't do anything, and if he controlled the dragon, that would have been so amazingly cool because, the dragon could have turned on Daenerys. I mean, that wouldn't have been bad. I wouldn't have minded that. And he could have done so many different things. And yeah, like with Cersei, everybody wanted Cersei to have like a real, huge death, and that would have been awesome. I mean, you actually thought that when, the Hound said, "Oh, maybe the dragon is going to eat her." I mean, I think everybody thought that, but I don't know. I mean, they kind of
I
went
agree.
with a lot of stuff.
I just want to say I agree with you. I was kind of hoping Bran would take over the dragon and do something like that. Because they did say that thing about one day he was going to fly. And then I thought for sure that's leading up to him taking control of one of the dragons, and turning it either on Daenerys or whatever. Yeah, but it's one of them things they kind of let go. All right, William, you had your hand up next. So.
Here's an interesting question. In the end, there's still a night watch. Why is that? Since there's no more White Walkers. I mean, you're having those people up there doing nothing. When you could use them, I mean, you're not going to rebuild that wall because there ain't no more White Walkers.
Well, I think that's just the way they're going to keep, doing the way with the prisoners. You got a choice. You can either go to the keep or you can go serve on the night watch. But I agree with you. There's no point to the night watch now. The White Walkers have been wiped out. So that's a big question. Connor, you had your hand up next.
To follow on what Carol Ann was saying about the Bran controlling the dragon, there is actually a very funny video out there that someone edited, and I think a few people here have seen it, where it shows Bran, and it's rather cleverly edited, where Daenerys' eyes go white when she's about to burn the city. So it's implied that Bran is controlling her to burn the city, which would fit in with the guy obviously wanting people to die to get his way, where he becomes king, and then obviously making him a more unlikable character than he would be. But yeah, that's one of the funny things. That there's been a lot of memes. I think if anything's won this series, it's the meme war, because there's been a lot of memes about the series. That's really been very funny. That I would recommend people go see, because it is properly funny.
I know, arguing with Bran Stark at that point, it's kind of like, I can't remember what comedian it was. He goes, it's like the other day when I was arguing, it's like arguing with Nostradamus. It's like, I know. Oh. Okay, so like it, lump it, hate it, but you have to give Game of Thrones the proper, credit. It really has set the bar high as far as, sagas go, or anything that's going to come after it is going to be compared to it in some way or the other, especially if you're going to be doing something along the medieval fantasy line. You got to give credit to the guys where credit's due. They did do some things wrong. They did some things we didn't like, but at the same time, they told a hell of a story. They wrapped it up, and now we have to move on. Now, hopefully we're getting prequels, as mentioned before. Now, I've heard, one's starting and the other ones are on hold at the moment. So we'll have to see how that pans out down the line, what part of the story they're going to start at, because, you do have a lot of history you can play with in this particular kingdom.
There's at least 3 in quite further development where it's probably going to happen. So we're going to get at least 3 prequels.
Okay. Well, folks, I'm not even going to bother asking for rating. Because, how do you rate a whole saga, especially one, like I said, that has really set the bar. So we'll just say Game of Thrones, like it, lump it, up to you. Okay, Beef, what do you want to add?
If you are really, really unhappy with how it's ended and you would like to see it remade, my PayPal is beef@aol.com. And you can send it to me. I am also working on another web series coming up as well, where Arya meets Will Smith, and it's going to be they're on a train, and it's called Wild Wild West of Westeros. So yeah, I will also be accepting Kickstarter donations via that same PayPal address.
Yeah, no, wait a minute. Are you trying to get in on my Patreon account? Rewrite Series 8 at GameOfThrones.com? Okay. Carol Ann, what do you want to add?
I want to actually ask a question.
Go ahead.
The wall was destroyed. So why do they have these gates?
Well, it's another one of the things. There were several posts along the wall.
another section of the wall.
Yeah, and that last part at the very end was at another section of the wall.
The part that was
Why don't they
destroyed-
just go through the big hole?
the part that was destroyed was called Eastwatch. The place that they were at the very end, I think, was Castle Black. So that was a lot further up. That was like in the middle of the wall, and Eastwatch was towards the sea. So it was kind of, I would never been able to take down the whole wall. I don't think. But
Either way, you've got that sad scene at the end where he's going off with his wolfie.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
Come on, it's like,
Goes.
yeah, he's going to stick to that not take a wife thing. Yeah, right. Who's going to tell him he can't and who's going to monitor it, right?
and he pet the wolf that time as well, which he didn't the first time he left him.
I can't believe people moan about that. For God's sake. You didn't pet the dog.
All right, go ahead, Carol Ann. What do you want to add?
Oh no, I did. I was going ballistic when he didn't pet the dog. I was like, he just abandoned his dog. I went ballistic. So when he got like hugs and kisses, I was happy.
I'm just glad to see that woman.
Daenerys Starbuck.
Daenerys Starbuck, yeah.
I'm just hoping we get as much satisfaction from Lord of the Rings TV series when that pops up, and see if it can raise the bar above Game of Thrones.
It could. You know why, Phil? But that's a complete book. It was finished. That's why. So
Yeah.
Exactly. So good luck to any of you out there,
Mm-hmm.
Well, folks, that's it for this session. I'm going to bring it to a close. So until next time, please, everyone out there, please enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you on the flip side. Have a good night.
Jamie Gold hands are also available at my Etsy shop.
Like Michael Jackson, he can only wear one glove. Oh, you're gonna.